The alien royal palace floated high above the glowing capital world like a silent god. From the outside, it looked calm and perfect. White towers curved like crystal. Blue lights moved slowly along the walls. Energy shields shimmered softly around the palace, strong enough to stop fleets and armies. Inside, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Earlier that day, the alien Empress had left the palace in great urgency. Her steps were fast. Her face was calm, but her eyes showed worry. She did not tell her advisors where she was going. She did not say when she would return. Only one order was given: protect the children. Her 3 young daughters, the royal heirs of the empire, were taken to the most protected chamber in the palace. Ancient doors sealed shut. Old magic wrapped around the room. Guards stood outside in perfect formation. Weapons were ready. Sensors watched every corner. Nothing could go wrong. At least, that was the belief. Then the magical alarms flickered. Just once, a soft pulse of red light moved across the walls. Then, nothing. The alarms went silent. Guards looked at each other in confusion. System showed green. No enemy ships. No energy spikes. No warnings. Yet something felt wrong. One guard stepped away from his post to check the hallway. He never returned. Another guard followed. Then another. They vanished without sound. No screams. No fighting. Only empty halls. The palace, once full of movement, became still. Deep below the royal levels, far from the golden halls and crystal chambers, a human janitor pushed a cleaning cart across a quiet floor. His name was Ethan. Ethan wore simple work clothes. His hands were rough. His shoulders were tired. He moved slowly, carefully, making sure not to draw attention. Humans were not important here. They cleaned. They repaired. They obeyed. They were not meant to be seen. Ethan had learned that long ago. He was a single father. He worked long hours so his child could live a better life far from this place one day. He did not complain. He did not speak unless spoken to. He kept his head down and did his job. That was how humans survived in this empire. Ethan wiped the floor near a long hallway he was never meant to enter. A forbidden royal corridor. Guards were usually posted there at all times. But today, it was empty. Ethan noticed that first. His hand froze. No guards. No patroldrones. Only silence. He swallowed and turned his cart around. This was not his place. Humans did not ask questions. Then he heard it. Crying. Soft. Small. A child's cry. Ethan looked up. The sound came from the forbidden hallway. His heart beat faster. Children did not cry in the palace. Royal children were always protected, always watched. Ethan told himself it was a trick, or a machine, or his tired mind. He pushed his cart forward. The crying came again, clearer this time, fear mixed with pain. Ethan stopped. He thought of his own child, alone, scared, crying in the dark. He looked down the hallway. The lights flickered once, casting long shadows across the walls. This was not his duty. This was not his problem. Humans who stepped out of line disappeared. Ethan knew this. He took one step back. The crying became louder. Ethan closed his eyes. He sighed. Slowly, he turned toward the sound. Each step felt heavy. The air grew colder. The walls seemed to close in. As he reached the middle of the hallway, something changed. The palace lights went out. Total darkness swallowed everything. The crying stopped. Ethan stood alone in the dark, heart pounding, knowing one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever was happening in the palace, he had just stepped into it. Darkness filled the palace. Not the normal kind of darkness that comes when lights fail, but a deep, heavy silence that felt alive. The walls no longer glowed. The soft hum of energy systems was gone. Even the air felt wrong. Thick and cold. Ethan stood frozen in the hallway. The crying had stopped. That scared him more than the sound itself. He held his breath and listened. Nothing. No footsteps. No alarms. No voices. Only his own heart beating loud in his ears. Ethan slowly reached out and touched the wall beside him. The metal was cold, colder than it should have been. He took a careful step forward, then another. "Hello?" he whispered, even though he knew he should not. His voice felt too loud. Far ahead, a faint blue light flickered for a moment, then stayed on. It came from a large doorway at the end of the corridor. A royal door. Ethan recognized the symbols carved into it. He had cleaned near these halls before, but never this close. This door led to one of the highest security chambers in the palace. The children's chamber. Ethan's stomach tightened. He pushed his cleaning cart aside and walked forward slowly. Each step echoed, even though the floor was soft alloy. As he reached the door, he noticed something strange. The door was open, just slightly. That should not be possible. Royal doors never opened without command codes, guards, and approval seals. Yet here it was, standing open like it had been forgotten. Ethan hesitated. Every instinct told him to turn around. Then he heard it again. A soft sound. Not crying this time. Breathing. Small, shaking breaths. Ethan placed his hand on the edge of the door and pushed gently. The door slid open without resistance. Inside the chamber, dim emergency lights glowed along the floor. The room was large, beautiful, and cold. Floating toys hung frozen in the air where children had been playing earlier. Near the far wall, 3 small figures were huddled together. 3 alien children. The Empress's daughters. They were young. Too young to understand what was happening. Their skin shimmered with soft colors that changed with emotion. Right now, those colors were dull and dark. Fear. They looked up when they saw Ethan. Their eyes widened. They expected guard. They did not expect a human. One of the children stepped back in fear. Another pulled her sisters closer. A human did not belong here. Ethan raised his hands slowly. "It's okay," he said softly. "I won't hurt you." The words felt weak, but it was all he had. The children did not answer. They only stared at him, trembling. Ethan looked around the room. No guards, no defense drones, no glowing weapons. The ancient seals on the walls were cracked, faint lines of broken light running through them like dead veins. Whatever had entered the palace had passed through magic that was never meant to fail. Ethan's chest tightened. He turned back toward the hallway. That was when he heard it. A sound like slow breathing, but deeper. He felt it more than heard it. Something moved outside the chamber. Ethan stepped forward without thinking. He placed himself between the open door and the children. The children watched him, confused. "Stay behind me," Ethan whispered. They did not understand his words, but they understood his tone. They stayed still. The sound grew closer. A shadow crossed the doorway. Tall. Wrong. It moved like it was learning how to walk. Ethan's hands shook. He had no weapon, no armor, no training. He grabbed the nearest thing he could find, a metal cleaning rod from his cart. The shadow stopped just outside the door. The air grew colder. Then a voice spoke, low, calm, almost curious. "A human?" Ethan swallowed. He tightened his grip and stood his ground. Behind him, 3 royal heirs watched a human janitor become the only thing standing between them and the darkness. And for the first time in the palace that night, the enemy hesitated. The shadow stayed at the doorway. It did not rush in. It did not attack. It only watched. Ethan stood still, his back straight, his hands tight around the metal cleaning rod. His arms shook, but his feet did not move. He could feel the fear crawling up his spine, but he forced himself to breathe. Slow, quiet. Behind him, the 3 alien children pressed closer together. They did not cry. They were too afraid for that. Their small hands gripped each other, and their eyes stayed locked on the dark shape in the doorway. The voice spoke again. "A human janitor," it said slowly. "Interesting." The shadow stepped into the light. It was tall and thin, its body wrapped in dark armor that seemed to absorb the light around it. Its face was hidden behind a smooth mask with faint red lines glowing across it. Its eyes were not visible, but Ethan could feel its gaze on him. "You should leave," the figure said calmly. "This place is not for you." Ethan did not answer. His mouth was dry. His heart beat hard. But he remembered something important. When his own child was afraid, silence made things worse. "I can't," Ethan said quietly. The figure tilted its head. "Why?" it asked. Ethan tightened his grip. "Because they're just kids." The figure paused. For a moment, the room felt very still. Then it laughed. A soft, cold sound. "Children of an empress," it said. "They are not your concern." Ethan shook his head. "They are now." The figure stepped forward. The temperature in the room dropped sharply. Frost formed along the floor near the doorway. The children gasped softly. Ethan took one step back, then stopped. He could not move anymore. Behind him was the wall. Behind that wall were 3 children with no one else. The figure raised one hand. Dark energy gathered around its fingers. "One step aside," it said. "And you will live." Ethan closed his eyes for a brief second. He thought of his own child sleeping alone somewhere far away. He opened his eyes. No. The figure froze. The word was small, but it echoed in the chamber. The figure's hand trembled slightly. "You choose death?" it asked. Ethan did not know how to fight. He did not know how to win, but he knew how to stand. "I choose them," he said. The figure lunged forward. Ethan reacted without thinking. He swung the metal rod with all his strength. The rod hit the figure's arm. Sparks flew. The impact sent pain shooting through Ethan's hands. The figure staggered back in surprise. It had not expected resistance. Ethan did not wait. He charged forward, yelling not in anger, but fear. The figure recovered quickly and struck back. Ethan was thrown across the room, crashing into a pillar. Pain exploded in his side. He tasted blood. The children screamed. Ethan forced himself up. His legs shook. The figure walked toward him slowly. "You are fragile," it said. "You should have stayed invisible." Ethan wiped blood from his mouth. "Maybe," he said. "But I'm still here." The figure raised its hand again. Before it could strike, something snapped under its foot. A thin wire tightened around its leg. The figure lost balance and fell hard to the floor. Ethan had set the trap earlier, not because he planned to fight, but because humans always prepared for things to go wrong. Ethan grabbed the cleaning rod again and struck the figure's mask. Cracks spread across it. The figure screamed not in pain, but anger. It pushed Ethan away with a burst of energy. Ethan hit the wall again and slid down, barely breathing. The figure stood, damaged but alive. It looked at Ethan, then it looked at the children. Its voice changed. "This is not over." It stepped back into the darkness and vanished. The room fell silent again. Ethan lay on the floor, gasping. The children slowly moved closer. One of them reached out with a small, trembling hand and touched his shoulder. Ethan looked up at them. He tried to smile. "It's okay," he whispered. But deep inside, he knew the truth. That was only the first one. And the palace was still dark. The silence did not last long. Ethan stayed on the floor for several seconds, breathing hard. Every part of his body hurt. His side burned where he had hit the wall. His hand shook, not just from pain, but from what had almost happened. He slowly pushed himself up. The chamber was still dark, lit only by weak emergency lights along the floor. The broken mask lay near the doorway, cracked and smoking slightly. Whatever that attacker was, it had not been alone. Ethan knew that. He looked at the children. They were standing closer now, not hiding anymore. The smallest one clutched her sister's, her eyes wide but focused on Ethan. The middle child stepped forward, just a little. She touched his arm. Her skin was warm. Ethan flinched at first, then relaxed. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm still here." He did not know if they understood his words, but they understood his voice. The palace shook suddenly. A deep vibration ran through the floor, strong enough to knock dust from the ceiling. Somewhere far above them, something exploded. The children cried out. Ethan moved fast, placing himself between them and the doorway again. "Stay close," he said. "Don't move unless I tell you." The hallway outside filled with sound. Heavy footsteps. More than one. Slow, confident. The enemy had learned. They were no longer curious. They were hunting. Ethan dragged broken furniture across the doorway. He pushed a tall storage unit against the doorframe. He pulled loose wires from the wall and wrapped them around metal supports, creating crude traps. Not perfect. Not strong. But humans never waited for perfect. The footsteps stopped just outside. A different voice spoke this time. Cold. Sharp. Human, it said. "You are interfering." Ethan did not answer. He focused on his breathing. Behind him, the children huddled together. One of them held onto the back of his shirt. The walls shook as something hit the door. Once. Twice. Cracks spread across the metal. Ethan felt fear press down on him like weight. He wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at him to escape. But when he looked down and saw 3 small faces looking up at him, trusting him, the fear changed. It became something harder. Stronger. The door burst open. 2 figures stepped inside, both taller than the first, both fully armored. Red light burned through the lines in their masks. They moved like soldiers, trained, prepared. Ethan charged anyway. He slammed his cleaning rod into the first attacker's knee. The attacker stumbled, but did not fall. The second attacker struck Ethan with the back of its weapon, sending him crashing to the ground. Pain exploded through his ribs. Ethan gasped, struggling to breathe. The attackers moved past him toward the children. "No!" Ethan shouted. He forced himself up. Blood ran from his nose. His vision blurred. He grabbed a loose wire and pulled. Electric energy surged. The wire sparked and wrapped around one attacker's leg. The attacker screamed as energy surged through its armor and dropped to the floor, twitching. The second attacker turned back, angry. It raised its weapon. Before it could fire, something small hit its helmet. A toy. One of the children had thrown it. The attacker paused in confusion. That moment was enough. Ethan slammed into it with his full weight. They crashed into the wall together. The weapon fired, blasting a hole into the ceiling instead of Ethan's chest. Ethan struck again and again. Finally, the attacker collapsed. Silence returned. Ethan fell to his knees. He could barely move now. His body shook uncontrollably. The children ran to him. They held onto his arms, his shoulders, his back. Their fear slowly faded, replaced by something new: trust. Ethan leaned against the wall, closing his eyes. "I don't know how long I can do this," he whispered. Above them, the palace trembled again. The enemy was not done, and Ethan knew the truth. He was not guarding the children anymore. He was the last shield between them and the end. Time lost meaning inside the dark palace. Ethan no longer knew how long he had been standing. Minutes felt like hours. Every breath hurt. His ribs burned. His arms felt heavy, like stone. Blood soaked into his work clothes, turning them dark and stiff. But he was still standing. The chamber looked nothing like it had before. Broken furniture lay scattered across the floor. Burn marks climbed the walls. Sparks fell from damaged panels like slow rain. The children stayed close to Ethan now. They did not hide anymore. They stood behind him, holding on to his clothes, their small hands tight and shaking. When the palace shook, they flinched, but they did not run. They trusted him. That thought scared Ethan more than the enemy, because he knew he was reaching his limit. The air changed suddenly. It grew heavy, thick, like the moment before a storm breaks. Ethan felt it in his bones. The lights flickered again, then turned red. Warning lights. A low sound rolled through the palace, deep and powerful. Not an alarm. A signal. The children reacted at once. Their skin shimmered brighter, colors shifting fast with fear and confusion. Ethan looked toward the doorway. Something different was coming. Slow footsteps echoed down the hallway. Not rushed, not careful, confident. Each step pressed into the floor like weight. Ethan forced his body upright and lifted the cleaning rod again. His hands barely obeyed him now. A figure appeared in the doorway. This one was taller than the others, wider. Its armor was not dark, it was black and red, marked with sharp symbols that burned faintly like fire. Its mask was smooth, without cracks, without damage. Power rolled off it in waves. The figure stopped just inside the doorway and looked at Ethan. "You have delayed us," it said calmly. Its voice was steady, certain. Ethan did not answer. "You are injured," the figure continued. "Exhausted, alone." Ethan swallowed. "Maybe," he said, "but they're still alive." The figure tilted its head slightly, as if studying him. "You are insignificant," it said, "yet you stand where armies failed." Ethan laughed weakly. It surprised even him. "I clean floors," he said. "I fix leaks. That's all." The figure raised one hand. Dark energy gathered around it, stronger than anything before. "Step aside," it said. "This ends now." Ethan looked down briefly, at his shaking hands, at the blood on the floor. Then he looked back at the children. They were watching him, not with fear, with hope. Ethan stepped forward instead. "No," he said. The figure's energy surged. The chamber shook violently. Ethan felt the blast hit him like a wall. He flew backward, crashing hard into the far side of the room. Pain exploded through his chest. He could not breathe. The world went blurry. The figure moved toward the children. The children screamed. Ethan tried to stand. His body refused. His legs collapsed under him. The figure reached the children. One of them cried out and held on to Ethan's fallen cleaning rod. Something snapped inside Ethan. He screamed, not in fear, not in pain, but in pure refusal. "No." He forced himself up, step by step. Every movement felt impossible, but he moved anyway. The figure turned, surprised. Ethan grabbed a broken metal support and swung it with everything he had left. The strike hit the figure's side. The armor cracked. The figure staggered. Ethan struck again. The figure roared in anger and struck back. The blow sent Ethan to the floor again. This time, he did not get up. He lay still, gasping. The figure stood over him. "You are finished," it said. The children cried. At that exact moment, the palace lights flared white. A powerful presence flooded the air. The enemy figure froze. The walls glowed with ancient symbols. Energy roared through the halls like a rising tide. From far above, a voice echoed across the palace. Cold, furious, royal. "I'm home." The figure stepped back. Fear entered its voice. Ethan smiled weakly through the pain. He did not need to stand anymore. He had held the line long enough. The palace trembled as power returned. White light flooded the broken chamber, washing away the darkness. Ancient symbols burned bright across the walls, repairing cracked magic and sealing damaged doors. The air felt warm again, safe. The enemy figure stepped back, its confidence gone. Fear replaced it. The alien Empress entered the chamber. She was tall and radiant, wrapped in living armor of light and fire. Her eyes burned with fury older than stars. Every step she took made the floor glow beneath her feet. She looked once at the fallen enemies, then at the destruction. Then her gaze fell on the children. Her daughters ran toward her at once, crying out in relief. She knelt and wrapped them in her arms, holding them tightly as if she would never let go again. Only then did she look at the human on the floor. Ethan lay against the wall, barely conscious. His clothes were torn. His body was covered in blood and burns. His chest rose and fell, slowly, painfully. The Empress stared at him in silence. Her guards rushed in behind her, weapons raised, scanning the room in shock. "This human," one of them said carefully, "is a janitor." The Empress did not look away from Ethan. "I know," she said. She walked toward him. Each step was slow, respectful. She knelt beside him. Ethan opened his eyes slightly. His vision was blurred, but he saw bright light and felt warmth nearby. "It's safe now," he whispered. The Empress felt something tighten in her chest. "Yes," she said softly. "Because of you." He tried to smile. "I just didn't want them to be scared." The Empress placed her hand over his broken body. Healing energy flowed into him, slow, careful, gentle. Not enough to erase the pain completely, but enough to keep him alive. Her daughters stood behind her, watching quietly. One of them stepped forward. She touched Ethan's hand. Her skin glowed softly. "He stayed," she said in a small voice. When everyone else was gone, the Empress closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her expression had changed. Not anger, not grief, respect. She stood and turned to her guards. "Remember this," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber and beyond, carried by the palace systems to every level, every hall. "When my empire failed, a human stood." The guards lowered their weapons. They bowed, not to her, to Ethan. News of what happened spread quickly. Across the capital, across the empire, across the galaxy, a human janitor, alone. No orders, no reward, no power. He had faced elite enemies and protected royal heirs with nothing but his will. Species that once mocked humans fell silent. Some felt shame. Others felt fear. The Empress changed the law that very day. Humans were no longer invisible. They were no longer ignored. They were recognized. Ethan recovered slowly. He did not ask for title. He did not ask for riches. When offered a place in the palace, he declined. "I just want to go home," he said quietly. The Empress honored his wish. But before he left, her daughters ran to him one last time. They hugged him tightly. Whenever the palace halls grew quiet and shadows seemed long, they remembered the human who stood when the galaxy did not. And somewhere far from the throne, a human single father returned to his life. Still quiet, still humble, but no longer invisible. Because legends are not always kings or warriors. Sometimes they are janitors who refuse to step aside.